All right. So I'm Nathalie Duval Couetil. I'm the director of the Certificate in Entrepreneurship and Innovation Program and associate director of the Center for Entrepreneurship. Is anybody in that program? In the Entrepreneurship Certificate Program? Okay.
I did the Launchbox.
Okay, so you went to the Foundry and did the Launchbox. Okay. How many of you are entrepreneurs? Anybody have a venture? You went to the Launchbox. Why?
A professor suggested, so we were trying to and explore the possibility of commercializing the technology that we were working on.
Okay. All right. So, and you're all, how many credits of EPICS have you is it the first time you're in EPICS or is it multiple? All of you first time? Okay. There's a mix. All right, so how about first time? Okay, so this is it, first semester? All right, you know nothing right now. Okay, second year, second semester. Okay, and third? Okay, the veterans, and you're still here. That's good. All right, so I'm going to cover a lot of ground, just kind of the highlights, some of the processes, kind of the big picture stuff of why this should even be relevant to you. Even if you don't want to be an entrepreneur, a lot of entrepreneurship is very relevant to you if you're going to work for any company nowadays, because companies want graduates or they want employees that know how to generate value, that know how to create new products, that know how to capture new markets, who know how to do all the evaluation that goes into that, and then who can do all of kind of the operational stuff that needs to happen to get those products into market or to get those products into other customers or new customers' hands. So don't dismiss entrepreneurship. If you've never had a family member an entrepreneur, it just seems very scary, because we have a lot of our graduates who are getting jobs because of some of the types of activities they can talk about in interviews that have to do with this stuff. Okay, so but stop me at any time, because like I said, I'm kind of going big picture here, pulling stuff from a lot of different areas. All right, so let's talk a little bit about this process, right? We see, a lot of what we see in the press is we've got Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk and these people, and they just create this fabulous thing and become a billionaire. And that's our image a lot of times of entrepreneurship. But entrepreneurship is even being self-employed, right? I mean, figuring out a way, which is going to be more important in the future. A lot of you are going to graduate from college. You may never get a full-time job. Probably not engineering students, because they're still in high demand. But a lot of types of jobs have now gone more freelance or subcontractors. Very difficult to get a professional writing job now. Companies used to hire writers and creative people. Now a lot of that's subcontracting. So, entrepreneurship can be a lot of different things now. So the process, as far as product development, this was kind of a very simple thing we had put together for a paper, just talking about, where does entrepreneurship fit in this continuum of innovation of product development, of things that we try to do in classes, in engineering, or in technical areas. So really thinking about, this creativity part, right? You have to have new ideas to have innovation. So that's really like what techniques can you use to create organizations that are innovative? How do you hire people who are innovative if you're the manager of an organization that wants innovation in the company? What we typically refer to as innovation itself, it's really the product development, the process development, and in engineering, many of the classes are very focused on that aspect of it. And then, what happens with that stuff can either be entrepreneurship, so you create a new venture, or you license technology to a company or something like that, or entrepreneurship and creating value for existing companies. And that's what a lot of new graduates are going to end up doing, is working for existing companies. Okay, and then there's this kind of management piece. Where does that fit? Well, management's kind of not necessarily the startup, but kind of managing a lot of these processes, right? So another process, kind of, right? Entrepreneurship. So here, what happens? Some people, they decide, I'm going to come out of what I normally could do. I could go work for somebody, or maybe I don't have a choice. I need to become an entrepreneur. So they kind of take a risk, right? They come out of their careers, they make a commitment in terms of career time. Maybe they put some of their money, into the business. They ask, friends and family to do the same. So now, to be an entrepreneur, then you need the innovation piece, right? You have to be creating some type of new value for somebody. And then the important part is somebody has to want it, right? Because you can create a great innovation, but if nobody's willing to buy it at the price that you're able to make it, you don't have a business. You have a great idea, but you don't have a business. And then what happens? You can generate revenue, entrepreneurs and investors, you make money from that, and to some degree, that cycle continues, and that's where a lot of the new money into companies can go, often because of successful entrepreneurship. Okay, so the important piece for people developing products is really this understanding the market. Because like I said, if nobody wants your product, you're not going to be able to sell it, and you're particularly not going to be able to sell it at a product. So if you don't get that market, you could spend a lot of money, a lot of time developing something in a vacuum, and then think, okay, and the way maybe it used to work is you could do that, and then the marketing people would take the product, and they would go out and see if anybody wants it, and then if they didn't, then you'd start the process over again. But what's happening in companies is a lot of this stuff has to happen more simultaneously, right? It's a global market. You don't have 5 years to get your new innovation to market. So a lot of this has to be going on all the time. So market research, you're trying to minimize risk, you're trying to save money, you're trying to be out in the market so you can identify new sales opportunities, right? Talking to customers, talking to suppliers, talking to partners, watching customers, all kinds of research you can do. Identifying potential problems, right? Everybody falls in love with their ideas, so until somebody says, just like you fall in love with people, until they say, I really can't stand you, you think you have a hope all the time, right? It's kind of the same with entrepreneurship. Until somebody really beats you over the head and doesn't buy a thing, then you finally say, okay. But maybe a lot of the due diligence should go in ahead. And the other thing is if you're going to sell your ideas, even if you're in a big company, you need data, right? You need evidence that your idea is good. So that's whether or not you sell it to your boss, or you sell it to customers, or you sell it to investors. But you want to make sure that you have data so you can make convincing arguments. So like I said, always have data when you're talking to your superior in a company. Okay, so the whole point here is reducing risk. And when I talk about risk, what's risk a lot of times? What kinds of risks do we have? Yes? Yes, right. Right, because you invest a lot of money, so the product doesn't work or something happens, you lose all that money. What other kind of risk exists? Yeah.
Time.
Yep, time. Time is money in a company. Yep.
Legal risk, infringing on copyright or patent.
Yeah, absolutely, which costs a lot of money. A lot of it comes back to money, right? What other? If you're working for a biomedical company, what kind of risks do you have? I'm sorry? Ethical, safety, right? I mean, so the companies always want to reduce risk, which means reducing costs, whether they're short or long term. Okay, so as you're developing products throughout all your courses, if you're doing design courses, EPICS courses, is really, what you want to be doing is developing, in most cases, not always, if it's a truly, completely breakthrough product, right? Sometimes you can't find out what customers want. But for the most part, you want to know so much about what customers want and need that the product almost sells itself by the time it's done. So this is what I mean. You have to kind of do parallel processing. You don't want to just develop it based on your own idea and your 3 friends who really like you, but go out there and test it so that it's a no-brainer. Once it's done, you've already got the data to show this is of interest to somebody. Again, you're minimizing time, you're minimizing costs, you're minimizing risk. So it should be like puzzle pieces. And like I said, and we'll have some of our instructors come in to talk about business models and things like that. But who's heard the term business model? Okay, so what's a business model? Go ahead, you did.
So it's basically you figure out who your customer is, what they want, I'm going to produce it, and I'm going to deliver it to them, and how it's creating the value.
Right, and how you're going to make money doing it, right? That's really what the key to the business model is you've got all the data and things like that, but you have to figure out some kind of strategy that you can get it to the people who will buy it at a price they will pay, and where you can cover your costs and hopefully make a profit. But even if you're in the situation of working with a nonprofit, the principles are still the same, right? You still have fixed costs, so you still have people to pay. So it's the exact same process. Now, you may not have to return money to shareholders, or, but you're always at least trying to cover your costs. And I also I'm teaching a product development course right now. Is anybody in that course? No. And so, I mean, even if you're working for the Red Cross, right, your job is to get blood donations. It's kind of a sales job, right? You have to go out and you have to figure out some proposition, some value proposition, so that people will donate blood. And you have to figure out a funding scheme that you can keep your organization alive. So the principles, even if you're working with nonprofits or for nonprofits, are essentially the same. Unless you're getting a lot of government subsidies for something, the principles are essentially the same. Okay, so some of the questions that you have to answer, and this is just, combining kind of the whole notion of market research and business models. Who are the customers? And that means really drilling down, knowing not just, it's every college student in the United States, but really being able to break that down into very specific segments of people who are highly likely to buy your product. Purdue has great resources. Do you have people come in and talk about the market research resources? No. But if you're working on a product, you can go to the library at Krannert, and Purdue invests hundreds of thousands of dollars in market research resources, data, just market research studies. You can look up pretty much any business, any industry. You can get it down, or different segments of consumers. I mean, they have all kinds of stuff. It's fun to play around. I'll send you the link. We have a link we have for some of our classes, and it leads you to some of the databases. But also, if you're going to interview for a job somewhere, I highly recommend digging into databases like that to learn as much as you can about the business, who the competitors are, and who the companies are, and just to get yourself more up to speed on the industries. It's a great resource. And once you're gone from Purdue, you don't have that resource anymore. Okay, what will they pay? We talked about that. The other challenge, how will you make and deliver it, right? It's not good enough. You have a lot of logistics involved in designing a product, making a product, sourcing the materials, getting it into the customer's hands, right? And distribution systems and customers, and so all of that is changing all the time. Okay, and can you create value and make money? Okay, and I like this because your mom is not a valid test market, right? So you need to, it's uncomfortable, it sucks. Did you have to do some customer interviews with anybody? Yeah, okay. I used to do that for a living. You call people up on the phone, they have no idea who you are, and you're trying to find out like their most personal business information, right? Trying to figure out their cost structure, or margins, or what new products they're coming out with, and it's really hard. But once again, the more of that data you can get, the more you're minimizing risk. And your mom is always going to love, most of your moms will always love what you do, right? They're not objective. Okay, so I was going to do a lot on business models because I have a fun presentation on business models, but one of our other instructors will talk more about it. But so business models of ventures profit engine. So there are many, many different business models. I think, when I was a student, the only business model I think there was there's some product I like, and I either go to the store and I buy it, or somebody, like some salesman, comes to your door and sells it that way. Like, how many ways were there to buy things? But today, with technology, among other things, there are a lot of different business models. For instance, a subscription service, that's a business model, right? I mean, how many of you are subscribed to Netflix, Spotify? How many subscriptions do you think you pay for a month? Who has more than 5? Things that you pay on a monthly basis. Yeah. So it's as you get older, you get a heck of a lot more of them, and more companies are going in that direction, right? So you don't even feel it. You just feel it in your bank account at the end. But what a great way. If you can lock people into paying for your thing, even if they don't use it every single month, like just think of that guaranteed revenue stream. It's a lot easier than having to go out and sell, a $300 thing, right? Anyway, so, what's the Kindle business model? How do they make their money? Yes. Right, exactly, right? So some of these technologies, like your your printers, right? Your inkjet printers, are worse than laser printers. You buy the thing for a cheap amount, and then, it's whether it's refills or it's buying ebooks. That's again another revenue stream. Not to say they're not making anything on that initial sale, but boy, isn't it great that they can keep selling stuff to you and you're locked in for a long period. So yeah, there are a lot of different ones. If I come back someday, I'll do those presentations. Okay. Another thing that we mentioned is funding, right? Now, everybody has the impression you can just start your business in your garage, right? And it doesn't cost anything, but it does, there's always a cost, right? I mean, either it's the opportunity cost that you don't have an income, that you're able to sleep at your parents' house, you have free rent, but that would be, or you're taking time away from your job, that's an opportunity cost of not working. If you look at more technology-based products, right, they have a lot of funding needs, right? The development can be very expensive. How many of you do research in a lab here at Purdue? Yeah. So, gazillions of dollars are sunk into, not sunk, but put into labs at Purdue, hopefully, hoping that these innovations will emerge. But what happens is, and this is one of the reasons, just in the past 10 years, universities have become, we're talking more about entrepreneurial universities. Universities are always talking about how good they are in terms of commercialization and entrepreneurship. We used to just talk about how many diplomas we would give, and now we're having discussions about all these other more economic development focused things, and that's a function of the economy, right? We need universities not only to make diplomas, but also, especially state universities, to show that they're contributing to economic development in the region. But in any case, so what happens? The government industry invests a lot of money in basic research. Why do we have all these research labs? A lot of that is government funding from National Science Foundation or National Institute of Health, or like I said, some industry sources. But what happens is, once the basic science is done, then what happens, right? So they call this the valley of death at the university, because it's not like we have hundreds of marketing people just like in the lab saying, what can we do with this product? So a lot of this stuff doesn't necessarily get a lot of attention when it comes to commercialization. So, but once you've got this kind of proof of concept, right? If you can bridge this, whoops, oh, that's cool. If you can bridge this with some sort of funding and activity, then maybe you can get to the point where an investor will be interested in the product. If you can get that market research I was talking about, if you can validate that somebody wants it, if you can get the patents on it and show that you have intellectual property protection, if you can get some funding to get, whether it's, or you can get more seed funding so people will invest in the business development part of it. So money is very important, especially when it comes to developing technologies, because you can't go, a lot of times in the entrepreneurship courses, at the end, when students are doing their presentations, and you always want to ask your mock kind of investor presentations, you always want to ask for as little as possible. So students on a team will say, well, I'm not going to take a salary, for a year. They all say that so that the money they need seems lower, but that's totally unrealistic, right? Who's going to do that? Especially, such strong graduates from Purdue. So, okay. So, I stuck another one about money. So, a lot of people think that venture capital is the secret to, or really an essential piece of entrepreneurship. But I think one of the statistics I saw was there are only 1,000 new companies in the United States that receive venture capital funding, which is really a very small amount when you think of how many new businesses are created, during the course of a year. So, thinking that is something that's absolutely essential and that should be a goal is probably not necessarily true, right? You're going to have to figure out some other ways to get your businesses off the ground. And also, people think it's a great thing to get venture capital, but, if you can do it in other ways where you don't dilute or you don't reduce your ownership of the company, those can be alternatives. But sometimes it's portrayed like that's such a great thing to get. In some cases it is, but if you don't have to take anybody else's money, then the whole thing is yours. Now, there are a lot of reasons why you might want to, but anyway, okay, friends and family, those are easy to find, but you might have a very uncomfortable Thanksgiving if it doesn't go well. Banks will not typically invest in any technology or new technology or kind of company. Why is that? Risk, right. And what do banks like if you default on something? Yep, they want something, right? They want to take your house. They want to take, if you have a building, at least if you buy a building and your business fails, they have the building. But with high-tech companies, they don't have anything if you default. Angel investors, when I was talking about that entrepreneurship cycle and how the money kind of goes back into the system, oftentimes that'll be people who have been entrepreneurs. There are a lot of them in Indiana and Indianapolis who have done very well in their careers, either in just their business careers or in their entrepreneurial careers, who have angel groups and are always trying to work with new entrepreneurs to help them get off the ground. Venture capitalists, typically over $1 million, they want very high rates of returns, which vary with what stage of development. So when they do very early stage development, they're expecting very high returns. Later stage, lower. But their goal is to get out of the business, right? They're not in for the long term. They want the value of the company to go up. They want to sell. They want to take their money and give it to the people who invested in them, their investors. So it's really a financial gain only they're looking for. But they do a lot of hands-on management of the businesses often. And then specialized funds here at Purdue. If you're a faculty innovator, there are internal funds that Purdue has that you can apply for, and it's a competitive process. But to bridge that valley of death that I talked about, you can get funding. Can't remember what the amounts are, but you may get $20,000 to $100,000 to reach certain milestones in that valley of death. So to get you to the point, maybe you go from basic research to creating a workable prototype. Maybe you get some customer data to validate it, so then you can go to an angel investor, or you can go to another source of funding. There's some state funding as well, or SBIR funding, so that you can get these other stages of funding. Okay. Okay, and communication. You students are so much better at communication than my generation was. Go ahead.
Where does things like Couetil fit in this?
Yeah, that is another source, but they are another source, but not it doesn't work for everything, right? I mean, it's a great source. I mean, if you've got something, I should show you a video. I'll try to find it afterwards. But there was a grad student here who was fabulous at doing these Kickstarter videos and was very successful doing it. I think that it's a certain niche. You have to be creative. But yeah, absolutely, it's another source of funding. Anybody done a Kickstarter campaign? Anybody funded a Kickstarter campaign? No? Yeah? Yeah, I mean, it's fun. It's almost more of an entertainment play than something you can count on, put it that way, right? So, anyone else have a question while I'm flying along here? Okay. Okay, so yeah, so communication. So I had my students, they had to present the second day last week of classes, and everybody's really a pretty good presenter now because you've all done it for many years. You know, we used to sit there terrorized with like cards shaking when I was a student. But it's a very important part of business, a very important part of entrepreneurship, because you constantly have to be selling, right? You have to be selling your ideas. You have to get people to believe in you. You have to be making a case for whatever it is that you're, involved in all the time. And really, that's one of the things I think we try to do in the classes is stress how important it is to be able to succinctly communicate those ideas, and also to a variety of audiences, right? If you're going to be an engineer in a company and you're giving a presentation to R&D, you have to be very cognizant that that audience is very different than when you go talk to the marketing people about what you can do with your product. So being cognizant of that. Okay. It's also, as I said, you need it even to recruit people, right? If you want people on your team, you have to be able to sell the value of what you're doing. Okay. All right, so like I said, we see the examples. We often hear in the media about the outliers, like the Mark Zuckerberg or people like that. It seems kind of like it's just this straight shot to the moon, right? But it's a big mess, right, doing this well. I mean, the thing you thought of the first week as being a great idea, probably, 2 or 3 weeks in, you've already changed it, right? Especially if you're getting feedback. So it really is an alignment of all of these things. It can be, and when things go wrong, it can be a variety of things. I mean, I've watched, since I've been at Purdue for the past maybe 12 years in the entrepreneurship space, there were companies that they were the hottest thing and people thought it was really going to be the big one. And I'm thinking of a case in particular. This guy was dragged out to every presentation everywhere, and then the next year it can just be dead, and it can have to do with a lot of things. People say, forget this. I'm not that interested anymore. I need to go get a job to, put my 3 kids through college, or it's often a mix of everything. It can be we just couldn't get funding for this thing. It may be I don't have this time for it. It might be that they realized that the technology wasn't competitive. Somebody else came on the market. It might have been that the development of it just was going to be too expensive. Whole bunch of things. So be prepared for what they call a lot of pivots during this type of process, and in anything that anything you want to achieve that's ambitious. Okay. So why is this stuff important? I talked a little bit about it, and I don't know how much you hear about this in classes, but we certainly hear it at the university, or at least because I'm kind of doing the entrepreneurship and innovation and leadership kinds of stuff. But the job market has changed so much that you can't just know how to do one thing well if you want to have a leadership role in a company. If you really want to, if you're ambitious, you really have to know a lot of things about a lot of things. I mean, companies you just can't be in a silo anymore. So, and things are changing quickly, right? I mean, I was doing an example of even, crutches in our class. I was asking students, so, what do you do with this product, right? And they're thinking, well, we have to make the crutch. My question was, how do you make these crutches? How do you